on an international flight. What language should you expect people to speak?
And what happens when that expectation just breaks?
This is Elliot Blackwell.
I'm Pandora Kim.
You're listening to We Might Be Wrong Again.
And today, this isn't just about a flight. It's about how people react when things don't go their way.
So, our mission for this deep dive is unpacking a viral incident that perfectly captures that exact breaking point. We are looking at an April 22nd AirAsia flight heading from Chongqing to Kuala Lumpur.
Right. It's a completely derailed situation. And while we're pulling from a pretty fascinating stack of sources today, we've got local news reports, social media reactions, an alleged handwritten guarantee letter, and even a historical tourism bulletin.
To really understand this, you have to put yourself in that cabin at 2 in the morning. I mean, it's a budget airline, the lighting is harsh, and everyone just wants to sleep.
Exactly. I mean, the environment is already a pressure cooker for high stress.
Right. And a Chinese female passenger, who is essentially the last to board, is, pacing the aisle and speaking incredibly loudly on her phone. Apparently, her travel companion missed the flight.
You really have to imagine the intense panic setting in there. I mean, it's the middle of the night, and she's just been suddenly separated from the person she's traveling with.
I get being stressed, but she's yelling into her phone inside a confined metal tube. So a Malaysian passenger sitting nearby politely asks her to just lower her voice.
And that simple everyday request is, where the spark catches right. A heated altercation breaks out right there in the aisle.
The AirAsia crew has to step in to mediate, but they use English to address her. And this causes the woman to completely explode.
Yeah, she starts shouting, demanding to know why the crew on an international flight departing from China cannot speak Chinese. At one point, she famously yells, "I am China."
Wait, she actually threatens the crew, saying if she doesn't get a satisfactory explanation, no one is flying today. She is fully prepared to hold an entire plane hostage over a language barrier.
I'm not entirely convinced we should just, dismiss her reaction as pure entitlement, though. If you look at the psychology here, she's in a state of sheer terror over her missing friend.
But terror doesn't give you the right to dictate airline policy.
It's not about dictating rules. It's about a baseline human expectation. When you fly out of your home country, there is a natural, albeit flawed, assumption that someone in a uniform will speak your language and help you.
I have to sharply disagree with that assumption. I mean, buying a cheap ticket on a Malaysian budget airline does not buy you the right to demand a customized linguistic experience from the crew.
Try to view it from her heightened, panicked state, though. She hit a sudden wall of incomprehension, and the English from the crew probably felt incredibly alienating, maybe even condescending.
But does a language barrier justify screaming at the people trying to, ensure your safety? Imagine you are one of those hundreds of passengers being told you can't go to your destination because one person feels uncomfortable.
Obviously, the behavior is unacceptable, but we lose a critical piece of the puzzle when we ignore the genuine fear of being stranded and unable to communicate. She was clearly looking for a lifeline and felt she was handed a rigid, corporate response instead.
Well, a rigid response is still vastly preferable to a complete public meltdown. I mean, look at what happens next when she doesn't get her way.
Right, and this is where the rapid escalation really begins.
So the Malaysian passenger who asked her to quiet down, a woman named Sunny Yao, starts recording the altercation on her smartphone. She later stated this was strictly for her own protection and to gather evidence.
And this is where things get really dangerous. A camera doesn't just record an event, it completely changes the physics of the room.
I think in today's world that recording is absolutely necessary for accountability.
I'm not sure about that. When a camera goes up, the brain stops seeing a polite disagreement and registers a permanent threat to social survival. It's like suddenly turning a minor dispute into a televised courtroom drama.
But without that video, this is just a he said, she said dispute in the middle of the night. The camera is a neutral tool that captures exactly what happened.
The camera might be neutral, but it is certainly not neutral to the person being filmed. The amygdala takes over, triggering a massive fight-or-flight response, and in this case, she chose to fight.
She certainly did fight, but she did it by completely fabricating a professional background. She escalates the situation by suddenly claiming she is a flight attendant for China Southern Airlines.
Which is such a fascinating psychological detail. I mean, why claim that specific type of authority in that exact moment of panic?
Because she was trying to weaponize industry authority to win an argument. She was essentially telling the crew, I do your job, and you are doing it wrong.
It was a desperate social strategy. China's Southern Airlines actually had to issue a public statement later debunking her claim, clarifying she had absolutely no connection to them.
Exactly. She lied to try and control a narrative that was being caught on tape. And, people clearly want accountability and want to watch these human behaviors unfold. If you're someone who likes analyzing these moments as much as we do, please take a second to like and subscribe to the channel.
It really helps us keep exploring these complex topics with you. But getting back to the video, you see the camera as a tool for justice, but I see it as cornering someone who has already lost control.
Let me stop you right there. If she felt cornered, she could have simply sat down, stopped yelling, and let the plane take off. You are ultimately responsible for your own actions, camera or no camera.
But the presence of an audience fundamentally changes our actions. Being recorded threatens our public standing, which paradoxically causes people to double down on their terrible behavior rather than apologize and lose face.
Well, her refusal to lose face had very real, very expensive collateral damage. Let's talk about the aftermath of this whole performance.
It gets incredibly messy for everyone else on board. The crew realizes they cannot de-escalate the situation, so they are forced to bring the police onto the aircraft.
The woman is eventually escorted off, but because this entire ordeal, the flight is delayed by 1 hour and 46 minutes.
Which might not sound disastrous until you consider the ripple effects of international travel. This flight was landing in Kuala Lumpur, which is a major transit hub.
Right. Passengers had tight connecting flights to catch. Our sources detail how several people on board were actually heading to the Maldives.
Because of that nearly 2-hour delay on the tarmac in China, they missed their connections in KL entirely.
They were left stranded in a foreign country, losing thousands of RMB. For context, that translates to hundreds or even thousands of US dollars lost on non-refundable resort bookings and travel arrangements, all because one person couldn't handle the word no in English.
It's truly awful for those innocent bystanders, but I have to say, what happens after she's removed from the plane is arguably the most bizarre part of this entire deep dive.
You're talking about the apology letter?
Yes. A handwritten guarantee letter, allegedly written by the woman, surfaced online shortly after the incident. It is an absolute psychological goldmine.
I would call it a staggering display of delusion. Let's look closely what she actually wrote in this thing.
In the letter, she admits to a simple altercation, but immediately shifts the blame entirely onto the staff. She claims the English-speaking crew added fuel to the fire.
She literally blames the crew for her own outburst, claiming their use of English was a dereliction of duty on a flight leaving China.
And then she attempts to mathematically justify the massive delay she caused. She writes that her argument only delayed the plane by 5 minutes, and it was the crew calling the police that caused the extra 15 minutes.
She's actively negotiating with reality to make herself look better. But then she delivers the most unbelievable boast at the very end of this supposed apology.
She writes, and I quote, "I got 2 rounds of applause from the whole cabin."
It's just beyond comprehension.
Actually, as a psychological defense mechanism, it is brilliant. It's a perfect example of cognitive dissonance in action.
Explain how that works here.
Her brain is receiving conflicting information, like, I am a good person versus an entire plane hates me right now. To resolve that immense discomfort, her ego's immune system kicks in and literally rewrites her memory so she can remain the hero of her own story.
Let's do a quick reality check on that applause, though. Chinese netizens absolutely tore her apart online when this letter leaked.
The internet reaction was swift and completely brutal.
People were very quick to point out that the passengers weren't applauding her for bravely standing up for the Chinese language. They were applauding the police for finally dragging her off the plane so they could leave.
It's the ultimate form of self-deception. She took a massive expression of public relief at her removal and internalized it as a standing ovation for her conduct.
The netizens also relentlessly roasted her letter for being full of typos and terrible grammar. They pointed out the incredible irony of her demanding perfect linguistic skills from a Malaysian crew while she couldn't write a coherent letter in her own language.
It really highlights how the internet reacts to these viral moments today. It quickly turns from a localized dispute into a global public shaming ritual.
But maybe a severe public shaming ritual is exactly what is required to maintain order. Look at the historical precedent mentioned in our sources. There was a very similar AirAsia incident back in 2014.
Ah, yes, the infamous flight from Bangkok to Nanjing.
Exactly. Unruly tourists caused a massive scene on that flight, throwing hot water at a flight attendant. And the Chinese National Tourism Administration didn't just let it slide with an apology letter.
They stepped in aggressively and put those passengers on an uncivilized tourist record.
They were essentially blacklisted by the government for a year to a year and a half. And honestly, I think strict tangible rules and blacklists are entirely necessary for people who act like this.
Wait, you really think a permanent government blacklist is the right answer to a momentary travel meltdown?
When your momentary meltdown costs innocent people thousands of dollars and ruins their highly anticipated vacations, yes, absolutely. There have to be firm consequences for breaking the basic rules of public conduct.
I agree there should be consequences, but I deeply worry about a system that permanently brands someone for their worst, most panicked moment. It feels very dystopian to me.
It feels incredibly practical. If you cannot regulate your emotions in a shared, pressurized space, you simply lose the privilege of using that shared space.
But if we pull back and connect this to the bigger picture, heavy punishments are just treating the symptom, not the disease. We are ignoring why these public meltdowns seem to be happening more and more frequently.
Because people are increasingly entitled and refuse to be told no?
Or perhaps it's because the modern travel experience is explicitly designed to strip away our autonomy and humanity. When a sudden barrier, like a language gap, pops up, our already frayed nerves just finally snap.
So what does this all mean for you, the person listening to us right now?
I think this whole story raises a really important question about how you personally handle discomfort. When you face immense travel stress or an unexpected cultural barrier, do you pause and breathe? Have we completely lost the ability to de-escalate our own emotions before they explode?
And I'll leave you with a slightly different final thought. If everyone around us is constantly armed with a smartphone, instantly ready to hit record and become the camera-wielding protagonist of their own drama, are we losing the basic shared social contract of public spaces?
So maybe this isn't really about language. It's about expectations and how we handle being uncomfortable.
Yeah. And maybe we're all a bit too quick to watch instead of helped.
If you enjoyed this, don't forget to like and subscribe.
Thanks for listening. And we might be wrong.
Ah!